Now back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show, which is presented to you by Power Planter Earth Augers, the official digging tool. To find the right size for your digging project, visit powerplanter.com. Now here are your hosts, Joey and Holly Baird.
Welcome back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show. Thank you for hanging around. We're going to answer some of your garden questions. If you got a garden question, you can submit it at gardentalkradio@gmail.com, or you can give us a call at 1-800-927-SHOW. That's 1-800-927-SHOW. Again, email account is gardentalkradio@gmail.com. Holly, what is our first question for today?
Well, somebody wrote in and said I had tomato hornworms last year, and they eradicated my tomatoes. How can I get rid of them or prevent them?
Well, tomato hornworms, a terrible thing to have. What you can do, what is wherever those tomatoes were planted last year, do not plant them again this year in that same location. Secondly, wherever those tomatoes were planted last year, as soon as you can get in to work the soil, whether it's spade, shovel, garden fork, tiller, whatever you want to use, whatever you do choose to use, go ahead and do that. Disrupt that soil, because larvae is laying in those in a determined depth with that species, and by disturbing it early in the season, you can actually bury it deeper or raise it higher up in the soil level, and it 90% chance it will not survive over the hibernation period or the larvae stage for it to develop into the devastation of what it does. So that's another way in which you can control it. And also, you can use, if you do have the problem, you can use a product. It's an organic material. It's called BT, and it's either in liquid or powdered form. However, you have to reapply that every time it rains. You have to reapply that on your tomatoes. But disrupt the soil where it was at last year, and even where you intend to plant the tomatoes this year, go ahead and as soon as you can disrupt that soil in case there are larvae living in the soil in that particular bed or area of your garden, to reduce the chances even greater in that tomato hornworm situation, because they will devastate a crop very quickly. Holly, what is the telltale signs that you do have the tomato hornworm if you're unfamiliar of what the signs are?
Well, most of the time, like a day or two before you're going to harvest that tomato.
It's always a day or two before.
When the tomato is almost ripe, you'll go out to your garden and you'll see basically a little kid came along and ate around the outside of the tomato, and there's just a core hanging there. And on that core are black or brown droppings, and that's how you know. Sometimes if you don't have tomatoes yet, they'll eat the leaves of the plants as well. So either or.
They're active during dusk and dawn, and during the hottest portion of the day, they'll tuck up underneath a leaf, and it's very difficult to spot. There are some images online that show that you can take a black light out in the evening, and you can illuminate them, and they will stand out. So that's another way in which you can control them. And what we have found is, one, not planting them in the same spot in which we had them in the years prior, but additionally, bringing in birds into the garden makes a tremendous difference. So wherever you're planting your tomatoes, at the time the planting occurs, or even a little bit before, just post wooden stakes, nail a tuna can on top of it, poke some holes in it for drainage, and put bird seed in it. And what that does, that encourages birds. Birds are very beneficial to the garden. People are like, I don't want birds in the garden because they're going to peck holes in my tomatoes. Well, if they're pecking holes, it's because they are looking for moisture. So incorporate a bird bath if that's the issue. But you're bringing the birds in. They're feeding off that bird seed, and birds have very keen eyesight. They will see these hornworms moving around, and they will pick them off your tomatoes. Now, we've done all three of these combinations because in 2014, we had planted 60 tomatoes, and we had gotten 5 pounds of tomatoes off of those 60 tomato plants during the whole growing season, because we were inundated with tomato hornworm. So in combination of all that, moving the plants, tilling the soil, incorporating the bird feeders, we've had 2 plants in 6 years that have been affected by the tomato hornworm. So good luck with that. It will work, especially the bird aspect of it. What's our next question, Holly?
Betsy asks, I have grown leeks for years, but lately they are almost all bolting. what is going on. Why is this happening?
Well, this is done or occurs even though leaks can handle cold temperatures. It's the fluctuation of the cold and warm temperatures. It's a very common, the most common answer to the question is leaks planted when it's cool. And then then it gets warm early in the season, then it gets cool again, and then it turns to summer. So that very harsh, rapid fluctuation in temperature can cause these plants to go into like, oh, it's my second year of growing because it was really cold, then it was really warm, now it's really cold again, and now it's warm again. These are biennials. Onions and leeks are biennial plants, and they will produce a seed pod. So that can be the best, most common situation. So if you have had situations of this in the past, it's not going to hurt to wait a few extra weeks to plant the leeks if you are capable of holding on to those leeks in your grow room or waiting and buying them later on in the garden at the independent garden center. What I would suggest is as the days get warmer, you can set them on a windowsill in the house, and then pass the time and with years past that this has occurred, harden them off, and then go ahead and plant them. So that would be one way in which to get around that particular situation. Next question here. Holly, can you plant an indeterminate tomato in a container with success? If so, what varieties would you recommend? Tomatoes I have grown in the past have been Brandywine, Old German, Roma, as well as yellow grape varieties. Thanks for any guidance and suggestions. Well, those are all good varieties to grow.
For sure. You can definitely grow them in containers, indeterminate or determinate. You want to use like a 10-gallon grow bag or a 5-gallon bucket with drainage holes. And then if your indeterminate tomatoes get tall, you want to stake them. And you can just take one of those tomato cage deals and put it right into the grow bag. That's not a problem, or right into the bucket. But you definitely want to make sure you have enough soil because tomatoes do need all that soil for their roots.
And you said stake them because explain briefly what a determinate and an indeterminate and a semi-determinate, because there may be people listening that have grown tomatoes for years, but they don't understand what that lingo represents.
Sure. So the indeterminate tomato is also known as a vine tomato. So that tomato is going to keep growing and producing even until frost, or if you just pull it out of the ground or container or whatever.
If you kill it.
Determinate is a bush tomato, so that means that it's going to put on one main fruiting. Once it's done, then it's done, and it looks more like a bush. It doesn't grow as much as a vine. And then semi-determinate, or I think they're also called mid-determinate, is kind of like a combination of the both. It's going to vine a little bit. It's going to put on a main fruiting, and then it's going to put on more fruit, but not as much as like a vine tomato.
A good indeterminate variety we've always found has been Black Krim. Has been a production plant for cool, hot, dry, wet, doesn't matter what type of season it is. It has been a phenomenal producing variety. And then any of the cherry varieties are very prolific. You know, a very healthy cherry tomato plant of a indeterminate variety can produce 500 plus tomatoes a year if you maintain it, keep it healthy, keep it watered in good soil. That's a lot of cherry tomatoes on one plant. So yeah, you can grow that on your patio porch deck or in backyard and get a lot of tomatoes off of one plant.
Yeah, for sure. So Sandra asks, I didn't get around to planting garlic last fall. Can I still plant garlic this spring? If so, how? What is the best variety?
Well, you can plant garlic in the spring. However, and there's always a however with this, garlic we have found does very well and the best when you plant it in the fall. We plant it the first Saturday in October each year. You want to try to guess about 30 days before your first really hard freeze. And what that does in the fall, that allows that plant, that clove, to develop roots, get established, and then that freeze or that hard freeze kind of sets it in a dormancy state until spring, and then it's able to project upwards and start really growing. Now, we have experimented with growing garlic in the spring. The challenge with this particular method of planting garlic is getting it in the ground as early as you possibly can chisel it in the soil to allow it to have the adequate number of cold hours in order to develop the bulb correctly. You're planting a clove and you're trying to get it to develop into a very nice bulb of garlic. We were able to get garlic. However, it was about 80% reduction in size compared to the fall garlic in which we planted. So there are some challenges. Obviously, it's going to grow better in the ground. My grandpa has always said, we grew up on a farm, the seed is going to grow a lot better in the ground than in bags in the shed. So you want to at least get it in the ground. And even if you have a small harvest, you can get something off of it. Now, here in the spring, it's going to be quite a challenge in order to find garlic available somewhere in order to purchase, because majority, if not all the garlic you see online is sold in the fall months. We would recommend a Spanish Roja, a German Hardy, a Georgia Crystal, something in that realm has done very, very well for us in the garden. All right, Holly, next question is, can I direct sow leeks and fennel in the garden, or do I need to start them indoors and then transplant them?
Well, so leeks don't necessarily do well from direct sowing because they take 150 days to grow. So we definitely start ours indoors. You can, I don't know, can you buy leek starts?
Yes, you can. Yeah, just like the onion starts. Go for your independent garden center, and they're usually with ours at Blue Mills, they are in the 6-packs, and you get a little 4-foot container of them. There's hundreds in there, and they do phenomenal.
Fennel can be grown straight from seed. You could soak the seeds for 24 hours beforehand. You want to plant the seed when the soil is about 50 to 70 degrees.
So yeah, you can do that. Fennel has a very what kind of has a very unique.
It tastes kind of like licorice.
There you go. That's what it is. You'd also plant basil that tastes like licorice too. So if you're into licorice, those are two different varieties there you can do.
Not for me.
No,
but,
no.
Yeah, definitely.
So okra.
Anything that tastes like licorice.
You don't like okra. You don't like. Okay. All right. Next question.
There's stuff you don't like either.
I know. All right. What's the next
Sandra
question?
wants to know about growing celery.
Okay.
She's been growing it for the past 2 years, part of her quest to grow all of her sauce ingredients. She starts celery from indoors in 2 different locations. Her own backyard doesn't get more than 5 hours of direct sun. The celery does okay, but tends to be skinny and more herby tasting. Is there anything she can do to improve the flavor and size?
Well, celery needs calcium for best growth. So you want to mix some bone meal or gypsum into your soil. Bone meal is a good all-purpose amendment to add to your garden. This can in the ground, and it will add the soil, and the plants will pick that up and have better growth. It also may be the variety in which you're growing. Also is the case of the taste too. There's several different varieties, multiple varieties of celery in which you can grow in your garden. So it may be the variety in which you're currently growing that you're not getting the flavor or the taste that you're thinking you should get. Size will also be improved by adding the nutrients to the soil, and you could try it and try it in a grow bag. Rootmaker grow bag. You can use coupon code TWVG show at checkout and save 10%. They got 1 gallon to 60 gallon and raised beds that you can purchase. By doing that, you have almost complete control over the whole situation. The grow bag, you're adding good enriched compost or potting soil or raised bed mix of whatever the case is, and then you can determine and start narrowing down factors and what's causing the situation for that celery issue. So good question. Our next question is, what is the difference between F1 and heirloom and organic and hybrid seeds? We talked about that in show 1. Organic is, and F1 is a hybrid variety. It's a cross. It's the first generation.
Right.
And then organic is plants that are grown by the United States Department of Agricultural.
Well, they're not grown by them.
They're certified by them. They set a guideline.
Right. They set a guideline. You get that certification. So you're growing organically under organic conditions, typically with organic pesticides or what have you. So it's basically like a stamp of your process.
Now, and the hybrid and the F1 are similar in characteristics and properties. They're not a genetically modification.
No, so hybrid is basically a botanist or horticulturist would take varieties of favorable varieties of plants and then combine those varieties together. So like a drought tolerant, early producing tomato, or a lettuce that is more heat resistant, as opposed to a regular lettuce.
And there's nothing wrong with hybrids.
No, there's nothing wrong with hybrids at all, especially if you're new to gardening. Hybrids are
They take the edge off, maybe.
they do. It's kind of like bowling with bumpers, right? Like takes the edge off. Hybrid is like gardening with the bumpers up. For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.